my God, it's the BC3 Amigos. We are back in town. Unbelievable. Can you believe it? We actually have with us today two crazy friends of ours who have a great podcast. And we invited them in. They came in, to us, and they said they really wanted to speak with the BC3 Amigos. And we said, what a great way to start the month of May. Kick it off with a good podcast. Talking with Brad and Kris. And when they're both here, and wait, hold on. Let me, Kris. I mean.
Hey, wait a minute. This is really the April recording, because we did our April recording on April 1st for March. We're behind the times.
That's right, Rob. Thanks for keeping us honest.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we are a little behind, with all the conferences going on, but let's let our friends introduce themselves, tell us a little about themselves, and then kind of what they do, how their podcast is going, and we'll pick it up with some great questions and conversation. So I guess we'll start off with Brad. Why don't you go first?
Steve. Very happy to be here with you today. My name is Brad Prendergast. Work with Microsoft, the Dynamics 365 Business Central. I've been working with Business Central since maybe a little bit longer than you. I'm not certain, since about 1998. Over that course of that time, I've worked with both partners and customers, working on successful implementations of Navision, Dynamics Nav, and now Business Central. Held just about every single role you can imagine over the course of those years. Also primarily focused on technology. Pause that. As you'd mentioned, Kris and I do have a podcast now that we broadcast weekly. It's called Dynamics Corner. And short but sweet.
All right, Kris, how about you?
I appreciate Steve. My name is Kris Rieres. I am been in the business dynamics, Business Central, Dynamics 365 space. 2006 is not quite as old as Brad. And so it's been a wild ride. So I've also held multiple roles as well, from independent consultant, but primarily focused more on the functional side of things. On occasion in the past, when you're allowed to develop against the source code.
I wouldn't even say it, man. Don't even say that you're a developer.
But I'm far from that now, but I have been working more on the functional side of things and into more the Power Platform side as well. We do have a Dynamics Corner podcast, as Brad mentioned, and it is weekly. So yes.
I don't know how you guys find time to do that every week.
No sleep.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Well, we started it a couple of years ago out of, just a passion and a love for the community. I think this is our third season that we've been doing it. And it's something that Kris and I had started just to do on our own, just to give back. Over the course of the broadcast of the podcast, we've had a number of different formats, but now we're focusing more on the format of speaking with members of the community, no matter which role they have, whether it be an end user, whether it be a partner, whether they work for Microsoft or else, just to get an understanding of what each person does, and to just also have a realization that we're all people that work with this product, and everyone, hopefully that others can learn and gain inspiration from the stories that other people share, and also can relate to them and understand that we're all in this together. We all have as I always say to everybody puts their pants on in the morning. When they get up, everybody has bad days. People get hungover. It doesn't matter who they are, where they are, what they do, what you think of them. So,
hey, but Brad, if they're hungover, you don't have to put them on. They're still on from the night before.
Rob,
you got it.
But sometimes if you have too much, you take them off and you don't realize you take them off, right? I don't know. But we do enjoy it. We have a passion for it. So we do put quite a bit of effort and time to it. Kris does a great job editing as well after the fact. So he spends a little bit more time on it. I'm fortunate enough that I just get to, work on scheduling and speaking with everybody. But Kris does the editing, and I'm appreciative that he does that, because I get to have more time to do other things. But it's just out of passion, which is where we find the time for it.
We certainly come a long way, as Brad mentioned. I mean, it was just a conversation that Brad and I put together, and I was like, you know what, we should record ourselves, and I kind of grew into more, and it is a platform to kind of put the human behind all the things that are what we do on a daily basis, and also a platform for many that younger talents coming to the space, and so hearing from industry experts of how that journey was for us, for many of us. And so we've also had people that are new to the space as well, and hearing their story. So it's been great so far.
Excuse me. I think you get back as much as you give when you do things like this for the community, because hopefully you're helping. That's kind of why you wanted to do it. But Brad, you said it, and Kris, you did too, is it's the information you get. It helps you see things different, and then be able to actually help other people, because now you have a different insight. So yeah, well, I think we all do this because of that passion. So
I think so. It's something that you need to do, and I'm appreciative of everyone that speaks with us, to giving us their time, because time is something that I know where I am. I definitely have a lot less left of it than I did start out with. So I value the time that everybody spends with us. And I enjoy the perspective. As Kris had stated, we try to talk with everyone to also gain some insights and different perspective to understand other people. And I enjoy it because I am learning so much about so many different people, along with Business Central as part of the conversation. So
it is making more connections, right?
Oh, yeah.
The connections and that networking, whether we do it with 3 of us or 5 of us or 20 or 50, they're all important, and it helps the community.
I think it's a different avenue. When I first started getting into this community, it was very difficult to find, where do I go and who do I listen to? And, and some of the people that you'd find are typically back then more closed off, right? Like, no, it's just,
I do think
I'm too busy. And when the community started, being put together, like local chapters, I think that was a starting point for my career, because then I got to speak to people that are similar space, or people that have been doing it for quite some time. It kind of opened a little bit, bigger door for me. And for our podcast is really kind of a more of a other reach as well, that maybe don't have local chapters, and maybe they just want to listen to people's journey and not just, someone talking about more of a technical side of things. Because I think that's one of the things that we're missing right now, is new talents coming to the space. So,
and Kris, especially the young women, we need to get more young women involved in this community. Yeah. It's just a shame that, you look at the metrics of what's out there, and it's, old people, and mostly old people like Steve and I.
I'm older than both of them, so,
I can definitely say your podcast has evolved. I mean, I think I've listened since you guys started it, and you went from a nice, simple podcast to a much more, the whole new format you had over the years. You developed the format you guys created and everything, and the number of people you've invited, from, again, like you said, totally different spectrums, of the, whether it be a user, a Microsoft person, a partner, an ISV, whatever it is in between, you invited in a ton of people, and it's great learning. But with that said, let's throw some information. Let's go talk about more about community. So we all got back from a recent conference, the partner conference at Directions, and we learned a lot from obviously Microsoft, and we learned a lot from our internal community, our partner ISV community. So what was your best takeaway? What was your worst takeaway, or worst part, if there was a worst part? Where do you see kind of the future? Where are we headed? Where's your, kind of give us your perspective of the future of Business Central as it relates to coming back from a good partner conference we had in San Diego. Anyone can jump in and go first.
Oh, okay. Kris, I'll talk.
There you go.
Notice how he likes to talk. Yeah, Kris, I'll talk.
Well, we had the dead silence there, so we have to. We'll ring the bell or something when it's our turn, or we'll have the talking. I have the talking.
There you go.
Look at that. I like the sound effects. Directions was a great conference. It's always wonderful to see everybody, always wonderful to talk with people. Kimmy, you mentioned it's important to network. Networking to build the connections is valuable, I think, because you can learn from each other. You meet other individuals. I have some great conversations about how individuals are using the application, where they're going, where they see the application going. It's a great way to share stories and get to know people. It was overwhelming, I think. There was a lot of information, and I don't mean overwhelming in a bad way. It's just, it's always difficult when you go to some of these conferences over the course of a few days with a vast number of sessions and presenters to try to determine which sessions that you want to attend to have the information. It's unfortunate they're not recorded, but such as it is for these conferences. So it's a big challenge to get some of the information. There was a lot of information, a lot of people. I think they gave out some of the statistics. It was the largest number of attendees since the start of the conference. And I think also it was 300 plus new first-time attendees, which is also pretty significant. I just enjoyed all of the information that was out there, seeing everybody and just talking with everybody in the community. One thing that I hated is the food sucked. I would go with that.
Oh, it did. It was awful.
I do appreciate and I understand. I'm not trying to be critical. I understand there's a lot of hard work and everything that goes into it, and I'm not aware of everything that goes behind the scenes. And I also will say that to feed 1,300 people, that was the number I think they gave, if I stand correct, to feed 1,300 people at the same time. But it still was pretty poor. So that was probably my worst portion of it, along with the time zone difference. It may have only been 3 hours for me, but that really killed me.
Hey, but the bar's made up for the food.
I do agree with Brad. It was probably the worst food at a conference in a long time.
Yeah, it which is weird because when I came home, I had asked my wife to drive me somewhere so I can get proper food because I was craving for proper food.
Please don't say McDonald's, man. If you say McDonald's,
we did not go to McDonald's. I will tell you that Brad and I actually, I think during lunchtime, we DoorDash proper pizza.
Yes.
Was like,
I saw that. I saw you guys with your pizza.
Why didn't you give us that idea up front?
You know what? There was an option for pizza, I think, down the lobby, but we wanted something else outside of the place. So, but yeah, no, I think the conference is great. It's always tough to see everybody. The community is growing. So there's a lot of people that I wanted to see and say hi, but because it's so overwhelming, sometimes you kind of just in passing say, "Hey, how you doing?" And you have to keep going. I did see that what Brad had mentioned. There's a lot more newcomers, certainly new partners. What stood out to me was that I think during the ISV VAR session, it was not quite balanced. There was a lot more ISVs than VARs on that session. I don't know if that's true statistically, but it was like 80% were ISVs in that room. So
they were. I was in that room, and you trust me, when you were sitting up there, it was probably like 85-15. It was the hands that got raised for the VAR were just like, oh my God, it's a sea of VARs, and just us few little back here, and like we were hiding in the corner. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it was certainly, and I agree. It's food. I wish it was a little bit better for sure. And in the sessions, very overwhelming. I wish it was a little bit longer and more use cases as well. More of a journey. I think Brad and I talked a little bit about that. So yeah.
Yes. No,
I deep dive sessions next year where it's a little longer, like you said, like the hour and a halfs.
That's what I think they need. I think part of the reason why it's overwhelming is because the application itself is evolving much more rapidly, in my opinion. So to gain all of the knowledge along with the information overload that you have, I think, as far as keeping up with all the sources of information, it's difficult. You mentioned on the deep dive, and to also Chris's point, we had conversations about how I think it would be nice to have a journey to maybe put some of these sessions in some sequential order, so it becomes more of a day of training. You get into this development track, for example, and those development sessions can stack upon each other. And your deep dive, I do like the way that Community Summit does it, where they have the short roundtables, which are 30 minutes, the sessions, which are 60 minutes, and the deep dives, which are 90 minutes. I like that format because some of the sessions to me were too short, because by the time someone who was presenting in every session that I had gone to, great presenters as well. I have to commend everybody. It takes a lot to stand up and do that and prepare. And I know firsthand, sometimes you walk into some of those rooms, you have no idea what you're going to get. And I don't mean from the attendees. I'm saying, does the projector work? Does, it's just some of the mishaps.
Yeah, some of us know that really well this year.
They're completely outside. But I think some of the sessions that they needed to go a little bit deeper, not necessarily have like a full training session, and some of them could have been a little bit shorter. So I think having the variable lengths based upon topic is beneficial to, and it's not so easy to schedule and to fit those blocks into it, but I think it's more advantageous to the attendees because then they have the opportunity to see a lot more, and then also not have, fill time or some sessions that should have been a little bit shorter.
I hope we got a chance in the meetings with Microsoft to convey that we are looking for a little bit more training. Don't just demo what you've shown in the release previews, right? We want a little bit more meat to that at the conference. And it's what you're saying, just a little bit more time. I did one on the bank rec with Copilot, and I watched the preview. I tried to duplicate the preview. My data is different. So I learned all kinds of things that weren't even discussed in the preview of, well, if you do this is going to happen. And, I couldn't figure out what was going on because I got two screens when he ever only showed one. It's like, what's happening? And like you said, there's so much being added. To keep up with that all on your own is hard. And it's a prime opportunity. There's the guys who know it. Microsoft is so wonderful to bring all the people. They just need to, I think, do a deeper dive with the consultants and the technical people.
And Brad, you said the right thing about scheduling better. We had field service. They had 3 different presentations and they were in exact reverse order of the way they should have been done. It would be nice if somebody could step in and go, okay, this is session 1, session 2, and session 3, like we do at Summit, where we say, this is 101, this is 201 and 301. So that's a great point.
Yeah, so hopefully, overall it's still a great conference. It's always easy to find some things that could be adjusted after the fact, which is good. And I say anything like that with constructive criticism on how to improve it, because I've been going for a long time and I hope to continue to go, and I enjoy it tremendously.
So let me ask you a question. Obviously we all were there and we learned from Microsoft and all the speakers, and they were great speakers throughout the entire conference, all the different sessions and over 100 plus sessions they had, including Microsoft had tons of sessions inside that 100. Obviously AI is a big topic, and the 3 of us, the BC3 Amigos, have been pondering this wonderful word AI for many different podcasts we've done, because it's kind of fallen into different questions and conversations. So give us your take on AI. Give us your take on AI, both from a software perspective, Business Central. Give us your take on it from a functional perspective. How do you think the users will take it? Where do you think it really plays well in it and not? This time we're going to start with Kris, because you've spoken. You speak too much, Brad. You're going to be pushed aside.
All right. Well, I'll start first. AI in general, or generative AI, or large language model, I find it to be, I think it's going to be focused a lot more on the end user and the adoption of the product. And I think that's a very important key of utilizing Copilot. Now, just sticking with the Business Central aspect here, I do find that 80% is going to cover what they need to, like especially the tedious work that typically happens when you're setting up Business Central or certain automations that Copilot can do for you. But it still requires somebody that knows the business aspect of an organization, especially from a consultant's perspective. I embrace it, and I am looking forward to what else it could do for you and what else can do for the end users. And because we want it to be easy for end users to get into Business Central so that we can focus more on the complex side and potential growth where we can help, an end user, work towards that. So that's how I view it. I'm really looking forward to what it can do for us.
Brad, what about you?
I wasn't certain if I was allowed to speak.
Oh, this is good. This is a great
bell for him. Bing. Oh, wait, let me get the timer.
Okay, a timer. Well, I get passionate and excited about certain things or topics.
You do. You always talk so calm.
Yeah.
He's always just so calm with his voice, but he's passionate. Come on, Brad. Let's see some passion.
We have conversation backstage, and it seems a little different.
See, he's just calm. I want to see that passion.
I have different environments. I have different passion, but I do have the passion inside. I think for Business Central specifically, I think we're at the point where everybody will throw a lot at it. I think Copilot, AI, generative AI. Kris said it, we had a conversation the other day with someone about all the, what is AI, right? Breaking down all the different pieces of it. I think it's in its infancy. I think it will be a great tool. I think everyone needs to remember that it's going to be a tool that you're going to use to help you do your job. It may not necessarily do all of your job for you. It has to be validated and reviewed. I do think we'll see a lot being thrown at Business Central to almost see where it will settle. The dust has to settle. I do think that from what I used with Copilot within Business Central, even outside of Business Central, it is a wonderful time saver. It helps. It almost becomes another assistant for you. And I think that we'll be able to see a lot within the application to help users both use the application and learn the application. Kris's point of getting somebody into Business Central, it's difficult to learn an ERP system, and an ERP system with a lot of features and functionality such as Business Central may be intimidating. They have done many things over the past several years with adding the checklists, to add the guided tours, headlines, a number of things to make it easier to get into the application and to interface with the users. I think Copilot will help with that tremendously. And then on the flip side, using it for some data analysis. So I see it as a big training and data analysis tool.
Where do you see voice recognition coming in? That'd be cool. Setups.
Voice recognition with the setups. I think voice recognition is difficult, but if voice recognition then turns over to be an extension of Copilot, which is something you type, I don't think the source or the origin of the prompt would be important. But you touched on something. I do see or hope, and I've previewed some Business Central extensions where you can type set up a basic manufacturing system or set up stand work centers for this type of business. If you look at the open contribution pilot, you pay attention to it. This is where I get passionate. I may sound level, but again, unfortunately, I don't know if I want to admit this publicly, and Kris can attest to it because we talk a lot constantly about Business Central. I have no life. I'm just passionate about it. But, a number of things for the contributors, like even like setting up number series, right? A lot of that basic setup stuff it can do for you. And Microsoft, if you look at the 2024 release wave 1, which came out at the beginning of April, the amount of Copilot features that they've added with being able to, add the sales line, still in its infancy, to be able to ask chat for, with chat GPT or Copilot, or even learn the field information, hitting on a couple of the 2024 wave 1 new features. So I know that was a long-winded answer. There was no bell, Steve. I'll cut back.
It was all good information.
It was good. It was great. So obviously there's AI, and obviously AI is going to be around. Was in wave one, a very heavy push in AI in wave one, as well as the projects and service thing they did. And AI is going to be around in wave two, which they certainly announced it when they showed us their wave two direction. But what else? I mean, where do you guys, you've been around the product a long time. We've all been around the product a long time, to be honest with you. But where do you see the next big push that Microsoft should draw a line in the sand, or put a stake in the ground and basically say, like, you really need to work on these areas? Obviously we work with our customers. You both do. The three of us do. So where do you think the next big push should be? I mean, other than the fact that their ideas are out there, but you guys, what's your thoughts on it? Because you speak to a lot of people, there's things happening with documentation and reporting and Power BI. So where do you see the next big push that Microsoft should concentrate on?
Well, that's
a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. Okay, so if I go off of my opinion, I still think there's still a lot of work in the onboarding component. I think people may be realizing this now, that end users that are interested in Business Central are a little bit more resourceful. And so they're doing a little bit more research now before they even possibly speak to anyone else. In many cases where we would come in, it's really just guiding them at that point and maybe consulting them along the way. But even before that, they would have made their decision. And so if Microsoft continues to focus on adoption of Business Central, I think there's going to be an easy entry level of going to Business Central. So using Copilot, for example, the other day, I think some of the examples that you may see using Copilot in Business Central is, top 3 sales order that's open for this customer, suggest line. And I just happen to ask the questions, hey, give me my top, 10 items that are most profitable, right? So I think maybe the next focus is that now that we have all this Business Central as the kind of the centralized data, and making it easy for other applications to put data into Business Central, the next component of that, where they should be focusing on, is how can you get data out of it? Like, how can you make it make sense? And so I think that's where, in my opinion, they should focus on, and utilizing Copilot for that, because it's being natural language. Because then I can just ask, how's my business doing? Give me a quick snapshot of it. So
cool. I like that. How about you, Brad?
Are you looking for a specific area of improvement within the application for Copilot, or just the application in general?
Application in general.
The application in general, I have to say I can't think of anything that needs to be improved. No. I think it's a wonderful product. I think it's adapted and keeping up with the times. One thing that I would like to see is we're rapidly rolling out new features and functionality, and I think Microsoft is doing a great job with transparency with their communication on some portions of what's going on with the application, where they plan to go with the application, as well as communicating with many members of the community. I think in some cases, I know that the docs and online and Learn, they're doing a lot to put into there to help with the onboarding. Kris hit that point, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I do think there needs to be a little more information about what is being done with the product, because they're rolling out the updates monthly. They have the waves, as you will call them, twice a year. They do put a lot of information out, don't get me wrong, but if you read and look at some of the information, to me, it's really superficial. And sometimes I think there's quite a few more things that are remedied or changed in there that aren't documented. So that's something that's not with the application that I think needs to have energy or focus, because they are circling through the application and making enhancements. I think it's the communication of what's changing. And that's not just from the partner or the ISV perspective, that's also from the user perspective. Because users have their systems updated. Now that we have this application that gets, I'll air quote, I can't believe I'm doing that, but I did it. You can quote me on that now that I air quoted, that that's always updated and always up to date. sometimes it's nice to know exactly what has changed and have a little bit more information than, the field was added to the page because it has a good business value. I think sometimes maybe a little more verbiage would be helpful. And I know there may be some cases where you don't want to put too much information, but that's one area that I would like to see improvement on. Not to take away from everything that's being done from everybody now.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question, because you kind of hit something, and it kind of I've been intrigued by it. I haven't looked into it much, but I've been very intrigued, and I'm wondering if you and Kris have dabbled in it. But there's this. I'm not sure the actual location, and I'm not sure if it's on GitHub. I'm not sure where it is, but the ability to write code to improve the product. I'll call it. I'm going to use the word freeware, but I'm sure it's not the right terminology that I'm using it, where common code, or basically community code, is now used to add a feature into the software that somehow is reviewed by Microsoft and somehow makes its way into the product. I mean, what are you, I've heard a lot about it. It's intriguing the living daylights out of me, because I'm kind of curious what people are writing and what people are putting in with all the stuff that's, people are coming up with. But I mean, I'm gathering the two of you must have dabbled in it, because we know Kris is a developer guru, and you said you go into it every once in a while, you said. So
Brad would be a perfect person to answer this. Actually, one of his stuff made it. So
yes. So there's the open source contribution pilot. It's not that Business Central application is an open source. It's actually a contribution. I would call it more of a contribution source. So that allows members of the community to contribute to the product. And there's a number of ways, not to give us a plug, but we have a couple episodes where we spoke with Microsoft about that whole open source contribution pilot, which allows members of the community to contribute features, functionality, changes if something may be not working as fit as it should, that they can enhance the processing of the application of it. That application, then when you get into the repository, you check in your code, that code gets peer reviewed from other members of the community, and then Microsoft themselves review it to if that gets approved and to move forward, going through the process that they go through and put into the application. I think it goes back to the other point. I don't have the statistics on the number of improvements that were made, but there are a significant number of improvements. That's something I look at frequently. Some of the contributions come from ideas. Some of the contributions comes from members of the community requesting it. That's where I get into the what has changed, because I see the number of changes that are going in there. And as Kris had mentioned, I myself have done a few of the I have a couple of contributions. I had one contribution that I wanted to basically, I've been working with Business Central for a long time. It was something very small, but to make a mark in a sense in the application, and it also to go through the process to see what it like was a very pleasant experience, to be honest with you. That made it into 2024 Wave 1. So if you look at that, assign the salesperson to customer ship to address. That was one of the contributions that I did at the end of last year.
Wow, that's a great.
I have another one that was also added, but I don't think it made it into 2024 Wave 1. I have to look to see when that's scheduled. So I think it is a great opportunity. My only fear with that, to be candid, is, and I have mentioned it to Microsoft, they have a pretty good control on it, is the flooding of information. There's not a lot where it's like overwhelming at this point, but how do you manage and control all of the features and requests that are coming in from the contributions of the community? It enhances to the product, but it can get to a point where there's too much, in my opinion. Another great thing with that is they also have where you can enhance the document. So if you aren't a developer, the other portion of it that you can work with, this what I call open source contribution, because it's not code, is if you look at the docs online and learn, that members of the community can contribute in that fashion to enhance the documentation, to make it better, to make it more meaningful, to have more depth, to have more examples, to have more practical uses. So it's another way that individuals that, again, who don't develop but may understand the application can contribute back to it. I've done a few of those. I corrected some typographical errors. There was new functionality added. The document wasn't updated. I just went in and put a couple small paragraphs or a couple small sentences to add it. It's another great experience. It's they changed that a little bit. It's not through GitHub any longer. It's through their through the website. They're in the process of changing how to do that. So you can just click on the page, basically edit it, submit it, they review it, and they'll make the changes within the application. So you can, one, give back, and two, doing it this way, we all can benefit from it. And no longer are we having isolated pockets of working with our individual libraries, our individual pieces of code. We kind of give it back to the community, makes it better for everybody.
Which is, by the way, important because the Copilot utilizes those documents as a reference as well. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, I'm extremely excited because I like to put ideas in, every once in a while. And then basically I've been hearing about this, like you said, this, I don't want to call it this open contribution way of people who are knee deep into the product, who can code it up and actually submit it pretty quickly over the idea system. So for instance, I mean, there are ideas that come out and ideas can sit there for years. I mean, they literally could sit out there till the dawn of, if you don't get enough votes, you're really not you don't really move. Whereas this contribution place where actually you put your code in, it gets reviewed by your peers, and then Microsoft gets to review it. So looking at ideas, and if let's say somebody came up with an idea, I want to do XYZ, and connected with somebody who's a programmer, and they put it into this methodology, would it move faster, I guess, to get into the product over the ideas methodology? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
It depends on what type of contribution they're looking for. Everything, and if you listen to how Microsoft explains it, all of the functionality such as that should originate as an idea. Okay. The ideas will get upvoted, reviewed from the community, I guess you could say, and that would get updated. But also, once you have that idea, you can raise it that you would like to contribute this to the application. They would take a look at the idea, see where it fits within the roadmap of the application, and then make a determination if they would accept the contribution of it now. Because this is where I'm saying it's not open sourced, it's a contribution. And from my understanding, from the explanations, I hope I explain it correctly. And if I say something that's improper, it's not intentional, it's just my understanding of it. They do look at the review of what individuals are contributing in that sense, because they have the product roadmap themselves, and they want to make sure that whatever someone is working on doesn't interfere with whatever they have in their roadmap. So there may be some cool features and functionality. So anything that's new, that's what I would call like a large feature, or not even large, but like a feature or function, does start with ideas. And then you can try to push to see if that idea can get properly updated. Now, there are other cases where there have been some contributions where the captions or the tooltip may have been incorrect or incomplete. They don't necessarily have to start at ideas for those small cosmetic type changes that don't impact the flow of the application.
Okay.
So those types of enhancements or fixes go a little bit quicker. So you still have to start with the ideas in short, Steve.
That's good to know.
That's good to know.
Can I ask you guys to go back to a topic we talked about just a minute ago? AI.
I'm done.
Thanks. Okay. So Kris, you can turn him off. Kris, question for you. So we talked about AI before, and one of the things that I am concerned about is that, we're making it simple, which is great, but is there ever going to be a point, and I'm going to use two different examples here. Is there ever a point where this becomes so automated that the user doesn't even know what they're doing anymore? Kind of like we have automated cars that drive themselves. Is there ever going to be a point where the driver doesn't know how to drive? They just get in the car and it takes them away. Do you ever see that for BC?
I do not believe so. I always believe, Microsoft historically has always started sort of giving you that concept of that idea, what it could be. I don't think it'll do it for you 100%. As an example, you use a full self-driving capability. So I drive a Tesla, and I've got the 30-day trial of self-driving. I still still, not only that I trust it to some degree, but it's not always going to, it'll get me there 80% of the time. There are going to be an occasion where I have to take over and I have to make the decision myself because, it just doesn't do it. But that too, right? So it's the same thing for Business Central. I think it's going to get you there. Look, I think positioning Business Central in a way that can get a lot of people into the adoption, like I mentioned this earlier, it's a good start, but I don't think it's going to do everything. I think there's still going to be a need for business consultants, I guess you would say, that kind of gets you like, hey, based on our experience or based on history, this is maybe you should consider this, right? So, because sometimes the Copilot's just like, hey, you should just do it this way, but it doesn't always explain to you why you should do it based on certain parameters that Copilot doesn't know, that you may know from a Business Central or business aspect.
I think with that, just to add to it, I think it's a matter of function. But first, to go back to it, Rob, I don't know where you are, but I would rather have. I know in the flag stretches, I'll tell you again. And I think you.
Why did you ask that question, Brad? Why?
Well, no, my point was going to be is I spent a lot of time driving in Massachusetts. I spent a lot of time driving in Florida.
You still have a license? We have names for Massachusetts drivers.
Well, I spent some time in there. I can't say that I like the state. I left the state a long time ago for many reasons. I won't say what I call the state myself, but the whole point I was trying to make is I would rather have self-driving vehicles in Florida and Massachusetts. I feel safer because I don't think people know how to drive anyway. Also, now to your other point, I think, and Kris hit on a couple key points there, I think it's a matter of function. I think we're going to have a shift because look at the calculator. When I was growing up, we didn't have calculators. I actually used an abacus and a slide ruler. So, and I could do math and everything quickly in my head. Now I don't even think about doing math because I have trust in the calculator, but that calculator has a specific function of addition, subtraction, multiplication, gives me the opportunity, more time to do other things. To Kris's point, certain functions in Business Central, you'll be able to automate. Other functions, you're going to need to have somebody make a decision based on other variables that maybe the computer can't. But now by easing up their workload, you'll be able to have the time and the skill focus to be able to do those functions. I do think AI is going to shift the knowledge bar, right? We have you have some really good people. You have some people that are in the middle of the road and you have some entry level people. I think it's going to shift what type of skill set you need to have for certain functions. I'm not going to say it's going to, annihilate everything or everybody, but I think it's just going to be a slide. And if you look at history, that sort of has what happened already. It's shifted. Individuals made horse and buggies. I know it's not the same thing, but then the cars came out, and what happened is we kind of shifted our focus to work elsewhere. My part of it is the speed at which we're evolving. Is if you look at historically, humans 50,000 years on the planet. It took us how many years to get to use a rock to chop down a tree or something. And then
thousands.
Yes. The wheel.
Yes. And now in the matter of, it almost seems like overnight, the computer's telling us what to do. So it's the amount of time between each iteration of change is decreasing. That's the only thing that scares me. Is that sometimes I think it's just getting too fast. And we as humans can't adapt to it as quickly mentally, I don't think. Again, my opinion, I'm not a psychologist, nor do I pretend to be one on TV. I just like to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
So I know we're coming up to our time here, but I know us, the BC3 Amigos, I really want to throw it back at you guys. I mean, not a BC question, but, this is just a generic question because, we like to do this, but what do you do in your spare time if you have any? We know, Brad, you have no spare time in life, so there's not much to talk about there. But Kris obviously has some spare time, except for editing the podcast for the Dynamics Corner. So really, what do you guys do in your spare time? other than, you know, you can make...
He better not have any spare time because he's backlogged on edits. So if he tells me he has spare time because he
you make fun of people in Texas or Jet fans or, you know, just old people in general. I mean, what do you do in your spare time, you know, both of you guys? And how do you keep it fun and interesting in the sense, you know, other than our community that we all live in? We've known you guys for decades now. So tell us what you do on your spare time so everybody who's listening to this knows a little bit more about you.
I could start. And Brad's correct. A lot of my spare time, because, you know, Brad and I do these podcasts really, you know, kind of in between among many things. And so I do work on the podcast, you know, outside of that. Spare time. What's that?
That's a hobby?
I do love the editing component of it, believe it or not. It kind of, it's a way for me to sort of disconnect of what we do in this space, right? In the dynamic space. Aside from any dynamics, of course, I dabble on Power Platform and all that stuff. I try to spend as much time with my family. And one of those things that I love to do is visiting small towns. And so I make a point of the beginning of the year all the way to the very end. We try to visit small towns not only within the state, but the surrounding states as well. So it's a fun thing to do, and that's what I'd like to enjoy outside of dynamics space.
And what about you, Brad?
I like to go for long walks. No, it's Kris hit some key points. I personally, what I like to do is I like to read. Since relocating, I also like to go to I used to hate the beach, but now I like going to the beach for shelling. Kris hit some key points. Is as much as we are in this, we do disconnect. You know, I try to now have one day in the weekend where I don't even use the computer at all. It's not like to have a shutdown day or what people call, whatever they call those hiatuses, whatever, because I don't want a short-term thing. It's a lifestyle change for me. And I found that doing other things on those weekend days, whether it's, I too like to do photography. I have done similar to what Kris has. I've just picked random places to go to walk around, to even just say I'll pick up a burger and a beer, for example, just to get out to explore, to change my mindset, to reset. It really does help me reset so I can come back and I'm more energized. Some people have that notion that if I work, 18 hours a day, or I'm in here, looking at this 18 hours a day, I'm so much better at it. And I will challenge that, because it's not what you do. It's not the amount of time that you spend. It's the output that you have. Like, we need to measure the output and to be productive, and having that detach. When I was up north, I used to do a lot of hiking. I used to do some of my best thinking. I've had some problems with Business Central implementations, and Kris and I have had these conversations when he's out driving with his family. It just comes to you because now you don't have the pressure of it. Your mind almost like freeze and you can think of it. So those are a couple of things that I like to do, and I encourage everyone else to do that as well. Pay attention, spend time with those that are close to you, whether it's your family, friends, the animals, or whatever that you may have, and just be present in the time.
The animal. I like that. The animals,
Well, I do have to say, I have to go back to what Kim said.
You got Noah's Ark going on in your backyard? Or what do you got going on?
I like to talk to the lizards out in the backyard sometimes.
Kris,
as Kim had stated, I am rather level. The unfortunate thing, and thankfully Kris spends enough time with me when we talk about this stuff, he knows that I'm sarcastic 99.9% of the time. And sometimes I say things and people look at me, I'm starting to realize it because it's been pointed out to me, like, are you serious or are you joking? And I said,
I don't take anything you say very
seriously. Don't, please. I'm one of those, if I'm serious, like if I say something like I'm angry, upset or something, or sarcastic, that's snide, you'll know if I'm really mad. And if you have to question it, then I'm teasing. The more I like someone, the more I tease.
We did create a rule to not have Brad do any jokes on Fridays anymore, because it's the driest jokes you ever hear. So no jokes on Fridays, no recordings on Fridays.
I want to turn this around because we have to do this. Ready, Kris?
Yes.
Rob, Kim, and Steve, what do you do outside of Business Central besides hang up crooked flags? And it almost looks like that star is low. I don't know, maybe if it's crooked. It almost thinks that, like, I almost thought the flag was, I thought the flag was upside down, like it's not proportional. Like the star should be like centered a little bit.
I need to come down, have a beer with me, and hang it correctly. But then if we have a couple beers, it probably will be even more crooked.
That'd be worse.
Listen, I just watched Baby Reindeer. I know all about hanging curtains. I'm not going to hang your flag.
You got to watch that show to get the reference.
Oh, gosh. Well, I have in Fort Worth, my oldest daughter lives here, and she has 4 kids. 3 of them are playing Little League Baseball. So that's kind of a full-time commitment to try to get to a couple of games a week, right? One of them just dislocated their elbow and had to have surgery to have it put back because he's so young. I just spent 5 days in Lubbock, Texas, having a little reunion with my siblings. So, getting, and from a day-to-day standpoint, it's just getting out of the house, walk around the block, close the office down, walk around the block, and just forget about the office for the evening, right? It's really hard when it's in your house, right? Really hard to make that separation. I try to stay out of the office at least a full day on the weekend. Just don't, and there's things I need to do and I know it, and I just, nope, this is my day to just not work in the yard, take a drive, something. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I do take at least one day a week off. I don't come downstairs to my office in the basement, as you can tell by the insulation. If you can just see the little pink here, I feel like the little pink guy. But basically, yeah, I go out. I mean, I've got projects. I mean, every year there's always some project to fix something. The house is 27 years old, so last year was windows, and this year there's more work to be done outside because my shed barn is falling apart. So I've got to redo the siding of it. So I got to redo all the walls and knock them down and put them back together. I mean, I'll help out my neighbor, electricity wise, because I don't mind dabbling in electricity. So I do help out my friends and neighbors doing projects and stuff like that. Love to travel, even though it sounds ironic because we all travel to places and things. But ironically enough, I love going places anyway to see what's going on in the U.S. or even outside the U.S. And I do vegetate. If you find me on vacation, rarely, but I'll just be sitting on a beach. I couldn't care less. I'll just plop myself on a beach and just veg and have somebody bring drinks to me. That's about it. Just keep bringing a drink to me, and I'll put my buds in and I'll listen to music. And as everybody teases me, with concerts and stuff, I'll listen to somebody, and I'll just listen to an album or 2 or 3. I do not read. If it's on Audible, I'll read it. That's the best way you're going to get me to read anything in life.
It's Audible.
If it's a magazine, I'll read a magazine. Yes.
Pictures.
Yeah, or it's got to have pictures. If the magazine has to have pictures, because I need to see visualizations. But other than that, I'm in Florida a lot, and Brad and Kris know this, and Kim and Rob know this. I'm in Florida visiting my daughter, who's down in Orlando. So I do go down at least probably 4 or 5 times a year to visit, say hi, and that's it. That's me traveling. Get around and cook a good meal every now and then on the barbecue that is on my deck when it's not snowing.
And I want barbecue in Texas, by the way, when we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a layover in the Houston airport, and all I could smell was barbecue, and I fell in love with that airport.
Come October, when we're all in San Antonio, we're gonna have some good barbecue.
Mexican food.
Mexican and barbecue. We're gonna have one of the two.
Both. Rob.
All right. I looked around, Brad, when he asked that question. One of the things I do, I was looking to see if we had one of these. I do play ice hockey. I play twice a week.
Wow. Oh, wow.
That's excellent.
I'll see if I can set this
There you
up.
go.
We do have our logo. I'm looking for it. Where did we put that?
In the back.
On the back? Oh, it's on the So down below, I don't know if you can see it. There's our...
Raise it up a little more.
Oh, I have to hold it up a little bit more?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, look at that. You have a hockey team with your...
I'm
the cheerleader. I
playing
cheer.
other. But, so we also we just got some shells. The shells are the pants that go over your padded pants, and we've got our logo on those pants too. So, we represent Accelerant down here in Texas. And the other thing, like the rest of them, I do enjoy traveling. I've been to all 50 states, and I like to do small towns. After this little bit recording is done, I'm going to reach out to Kris and find out some little towns to go to.
All right.
Excellent. See, and that's one of the facts is I never knew that Rob played hockey.
I didn't know that either.
Right. So it's like, this is where like there's the whole human factor of all of this that we do.
My dentist, he'll tell you about the dental work I've had.
Well, I'm going to fixate on this now. If you didn't know, it's just the way I am. But now I understand why the flag's crooked, because you think it's straight. Because you've been hitting the head maybe one too many times with a check into the board or something.
Looks good to me.
Right.
Before we go, I need to ask Kris and Brad, are we going to see you at DynamicsCon Live next month?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the weather.
Listen,
It's snowing there. It snowed this past weekend, so we just had snow in Denver.
I saw that Kristen Hosman has been keeping us up to date with the weather in Denver to be prepared to what to wear, what to bring, and that cold might keep me away. I'm scheduled to be there.
Yeah, I'll be there as well. I'll be coming in on the 12th with Steve. Steve will be my chauffeur because he has a car. So I'm excited for him to drive me around.
Yes, so I'm looking
You're
forward
excited?
to
I'd be
the wall.
scared.
I will have no part of that.
No, we're excited to be there. I think it's going to be a fun event. I mean, I was able to make it last year at the last minute, so that was a fun one due to peer pressure from Brad and Kristen. They called me one morning, and I think I flew out within 2 hours after that call and made it to Scottsdale. I was like, I don't know where I'm staying, but I'm going to show up. We'll be there.
I did let you hang in there.
I eventually had an open room, so I was able to get a room later that afternoon. So I was lucky to find a place. So, but I'll be in Denver. I'm looking forward to that and seeing everyone again.
I'm looking forward to it. So I will be there. I'm sarcasm with the weather, but I'll have to determine what to pack. I'm not coming in on the 12th. I'll get there on the 13th. So I'll miss out on the Steve driving extravaganza.
Come on. I mean, you think of it like a New York cabbie driver getting you from one end of Manhattan to the other in 5 minutes, like one of those kind of drives.
So what I was going to say is Kris can take notes and tell us all the crazy stuff you did while you were driving.
You forget it, man. If you don't want to be in the car as a New York driver and you're driving slow in the middle of Denver, I can imagine the Denver drivers. If they're like Florida drivers, you definitely don't want to be in the car with me. I mean, I'm the worst when it comes to driving in Orlando. You don't want to be near me.
And I think I've reconsidered about those automatic car driving.
There's some benefit to that. I think we will all be safer with that because of the individuals such as Steve. Because I know down here, it's the people either are going way too slow, and I'm not saying as I have a lead foot, I drive the speed limit, I drive people crazy, or they go no one drives the speed limit here. They're either going 200 or 20, not 220. It's either 200 or 20, and it's just like, what's going on here?
Well, Steve, just make sure you rent a Tesla, all right? So we can drive us around.
Because I want to make, I'm going to annoy Rob, because Rob doesn't like the Tesla. He hated the electric car. And I figured, let's get a Tesla just to annoy people. Yep.
One last thing about that Tesla, you can put in where you want to go for a charging station, but if they're out of power when you get there, you have to wait in line for the one station that has anything. You're there for hours.
Yeah, it depends where you're
Gas
at.
stations run out of gas too, Rob.
Not in Texas.
Not in Texas. I was going to say not in Texas.
Not in Texas.
Come over here.
All right.
The oil jack and just get some oil. We good.
That's right.
All right. A big thank you from the BC3 Amigos to our cohorts in crime here on the Dynamics Podcast here, Brad and Kris, for joining with us today. Thanks for coming on board here and doing a podcast with us. We'd really appreciate it. We loved having talk about BC, the community, and of course, your lives in general. So last but not least, you have to do this before you leave. You have to do the BC Three Amigos dance.
What? My dancing.
Look at their faces. That was just priceless. Right there. Boom.
I didn't see. You have to show it to us.
Oh, no, it's not live. No, you just go ahead and start.
No, at DynamicsCon Live, we'll do it, Steve.
All right, we're going to do, when we tape our show at DynamicsCon Live, we're going to definitely have to bring a bunch of people up there to do some dancing, so.
Absolutely.
But again, a big thank you to you guys for coming on board. Everybody who's listening to us, please watch out for our next update. We'll probably do one for DynamicsCon Live later this month. And definitely join Brad and Kris on their Dynamics Corner podcast, which are done weekly. Look out for their stuff. And anything else you guys want to add before we say goodbye?
Thanks for having us. It was a pleasure being in this Three Amigos.
Yes. Thank you very much for having us. I enjoyed the conversation, enjoy everything that you all do for the community, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
I'm going to give him some caffeine, Kris. Just a little more pep on that speech, You get him a little more excited. You see how he's, he's very monotone.
What's sarcastic, Steve?
Steve.
There we go.
Yeah,
all right.
This is Brad. This episode was good. Ciao.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Ciao.